welcome after lunch, everyone. I'm sure that you've had your nice fair share of caffeine since you're on your break, but now we are joined by none other than Bill Ford, Executive Chairman of Ford Motor Company, and you have Ireland in your blood.
I do.
Bill.
I do. So, like so many Americans, my ancestors came from County Cork. Henry Ford's father, William Ford, was born here and then came over during the famine. And so, yeah, this is ancestral home for me, and I love coming back.
Ireland in your blood. Technology getting in your bloodstream.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was fascinated to hear that actually your roles have been within technology companies, some of the greatest. You've served on the board of eBay, and for a very long time now, you've been seeing how technology can work within what is in your ancestry as well, the auto area.
Yeah, so really, if you take a step back, I believe that any company only exists to make people's lives better, and if it's not doing that, it probably doesn't deserve to exist. So it always struck me that we had to reimagine what it meant to be a transportation company. And I gave a TED Talk in 2011 about the fact that there was this rising issue that people weren't focused on called global gridlock, and urban mobility was something that was becoming a real problem. And when I did that, you can imagine the resistance I got within my industry, because people were simply looking at rising GDPs around the world, and they were saying, this is fantastic. We're going to be selling, X number of more vehicles. And I simply said, really? How? And where are they going to go?
Yeah.
You already can't move in major urban areas around the world. And if you believe the futurists, where we're going from 7 billion people to 9 billion by mid-century, and they're moving increasingly to cities, that problem was going to be greatly exacerbated unless we radically changed what it meant to be what we were, a car and truck company, and now we've redefined ourselves as a mobility company.
So this is a shift, this is a change of business model at the moment. And where are you most excited about the business model changing to? Because there are so many areas you could be looking at, whether it's a new method of transport, whether it's a new area of collecting data. Which bits are you focusing on?
Well, all of it, and you have to look at all of it, because, and there are discrete buckets. I mean, you've got autonomous driving, then you have connected cars, then you have new ways of accessing ownership of vehicles, whether it's, things like Zipcar or Uber or Lyft, or, and then you have, as you mentioned, data collection. And really, it's going to be the company that can stitch all that together in a way that, again, makes people's lives easier. To me, is going to be the company that will emerge as a winner in this. And it's going to require partnerships with big technology companies and also with startups.
So actually, you're not scared of this changing in business model? You're not worried about
God,
the
no.
world buying fewer cars, sharing more cars, hitching lifts in different ways?
Well, look, it's going to happen anyway, and I'd like it to happen with us. But our business model will change, and will have to change. We will have a foot in each world because we have to. I mean, we have to make great cars and trucks today. But we also have to imagine a future of transportation as a service. And that will require us to play in a lot of different areas that we don't play in today. And we have experiments in all these areas around the world. And it will also then require us to think a little more expansively. For instance, what if a car could actually stop being just a piece of transportation? And what if a car could actually help solve problems for people? And I'll give you an example. We have a couple of things going now that I think are really cool. In India, we are taking our SUVs out to rural areas that aren't well mapped, and we are going to villages, and we are meeting with expectant mothers, and we're transmitting the health of those mothers back to urban hospitals. And then over the course of their pregnancies, we can monitor how she is doing, and then send advice and information both ways, back and forth. Similarly, in Africa, we're partnering with NGOs in South Africa and now Nigeria to go into areas that aren't well mapped, and our vehicles will map them.
Okay.
But also work with those NGOs to, whether it's healthcare or clean water or food, whatever those communities need, And we'll collect data, and then the NGOs will share that data as well. So it's all about how do you turn a car from today's piece of transportation into something that can help make people's lives better.
So you're experimenting geographically, you're helping in terms of making it a force for good, but also you're experimenting by getting involved with startups. I mean, we are at the world's biggest gathering of startups, a sea of entrepreneurs in front of you. How are you accessing that pool of talent? How can they reach out to Ford with their great ideas?
So that's a great question, because traditionally big companies and startups, it's like two ships passing in the night. And when they have collided, usually hasn't been a happy outcome for either. So we're acutely aware of that. And so we have spent a lot of time discussing. We've just opened a very large Silicon Valley laboratory and office to enable startups to find us. And we're doing this around the world, where we'll have points of contact, and then those points of contact don't just open doors, but they actually then help shepherd the companies through the process, so they don't abandon them. And this is all new for us, but we have to do it, because if I think of the world that we are about to enter into, and we're going to need partnerships with big technology companies and with startups. You know, I started my own venture capital firm about 7 years ago to invest in mobility solutions at a time when nobody even knew what mobility was. And so and having done so now for a number of years, I understand both the promise and the pitfalls of startups and big companies working together.
I mean, there's also a name that many in this audience will know, Techstars, coming out into Detroit as well. And you're working with some of the startups there, helping mentor them to a certain extent?
Yeah, it's been a blast. So yeah, Techstars came to Detroit. Techstars Mobility, they had thousands of applicants. They chose 10 companies. And I've been helping mentor those companies, helping them with their business plans, helping them figure out how they can scale their ideas, and importantly, helping them find customers. To me, you know, it's wildly exciting, and I love it.
If someone was listening to you, I come away thinking, I mean, wow, cars, force for good. This is helping people, making them thinking outside the box, being able to map new territories. But at the end of the day, you're also a company that needs to make profits in some way, shape, or form. Where is the business model of the future that best encapsulates startup and technology disruption within the auto sector?
Caroline, I'd be lying to you if I said I knew the precise answer to that. This is all new to us, but it's clearly, you know, and as I said a second ago, we're going to have to do both. We're going to have to make great cars and trucks today, and we're going to have to migrate, particularly in urban areas, to a very different business model, and one which will be, you know, much more transportation as service. And the car's role in that may be diminished, in some cases, you know, diminished greatly, but there will be different revenue streams along the way that we can and will participate in that will look quite different than today's revenue streams.
So is it all about owning the data? Is that what automakers have got to be?
Well, data is an important part of it, there's no question, but also think of it for the customer. So today, you know, auto companies don't really touch the customer very often. You know, you have the initial purchase, and you know, and then you might, you know, you have your dealer for, you know, you clearly do for service. But what if we could touch them in a way, again, that they found made their lives easier and better, and much more frequently with value-added things. So the whole customer experience is going to change dramatically too. And that customer may be a traditional customer, i.e. you buy a car or truck. It may be part of a service. I mean, the whole idea of the whole definition of a customer is going to change.
What about autonomous vehicles? You were talking about them earlier. What about the likes of Apple, Google moving in on the space?
Yep.
Does that worry you? Does that excite you? Does that intrigue you?
I think it's awesome because, you know, if you think of this industry, you know, I mentioned this to you earlier, you know, we've been revolution resistant for 100 years. I mean, if you look at the business model of our industry from when my great-grandfather started Ford, it really didn't change a lot I mean, it's certainly evolved, and you know, the cars and trucks today have evolved, you know, enormously from, you know, the Model T. But compared to other industries where there were a series of revolutions and they happened quite quickly, We are now, though, at a point where we are at the threshold of a series of revolutions in our industry. And I think it's, the new entrants that are interested in this business will only make it a better business. To me, it's really exciting. And there are great partnership opportunities too, again, with big companies and with small companies.
So would you want to partner with the likes of Apple and Google?
I mean, you never know. I mean, it's and there are many more out there too. But I do think partnerships are going to be important, because the notion, if you think back to my great-grandfather, where the vision was to have a completely vertically integrated company where they made everything except the tires, that model, will be very different in the future. It will be a series of partnerships, because one company can't and probably shouldn't know it all or do it all.
How do you revolutionize, and how do you transform yourselves accountably and transparent? I mean, we've got to pay lip service to it today, that a lot of people are thinking software, hardware, cars, Volkswagen. What do you say to be able to ensure that you have got transparency when it's coming to technology is not always a force for good when it comes to autos?
Well, again, a lot of it has to do, and I can't speak to any other company, but I can only speak to ours. And it's very important that your culture is one that rewards transparency, and if you do identify a problem, and you're always going to have problems, but you do it quickly, you deal with it quickly, and you do it openly. And if you set an example like that, I mean, there's an outfit called Ethisphere that looks at corporate ethics, and we've been named 6 years in a row, the only auto to be named one of the world's most ethical companies. And while I love that, it doesn't ensure anything going forward. But what it does mean is that others looking at us believe, and I believe, that we drive a culture of accountability and transparency, so that if we find something wrong, we'll act on it. Because no company's perfect. We're not perfect. I mean, my goodness, we can't be. But what we can do is deal with reality when we find it. I can't speak to what's going on in other companies, but you're right. Privacy, software. I mean, there are all kinds of issues around the world that we're describing. We're sorting our way through it, like so many companies are.
And a lot of that has to do with the talent that you're employing and the culture that you bring on board. What is it like out there? Are you hiring loads of technologists at the moment? Is that an area that Ford is really having to ramp up in? We are. We're hiring both software and hardware engineers and technologists, because we have to. But it's really cool, because one of the things that's true about the next generation is people like to work on interesting problems. And if you can give them, like I believe we can, a problem like, hey, help us solve the future of transportation and how to move people and goods and healthcare around city centers in a way that they can't today, that's a pretty cool problem to work on. I mean, it's a big problem, but it's a very cool problem, and it's a compelling issue. And so I think, if young people who are looking for fun jobs find this a really interesting place to work, then that's awesome. And we, fortunately, are finding those people that are thinking this is an interesting set of issues. Give me the Bill Ford utopia then in 5-10 years' time. Oh my gosh. Where do you see your industry? Well, one thing about predictions is they're always wrong. But I do think one thing I know for sure, and I'm speaking to the converted in this audience because you live this every day, the level of change, whatever we think it is, it's twice as fast. That's for sure. We used to talk about autonomous driving as 25 to 30 years away. Well, no, it's not. We used to talk about connected cars as medium term, whatever that means. It's not. And so the level of disruption, the pace of disruption, and the pace of change is always going to come at us much faster than we thought. But there's one caveat in all this, and that is we can't make people's lives more complicated. Because the technology that's available is dazzling, and it's only going to become more so. But we have to present it in a way that's thoughtful, so that our customers around the world, and recognizing that there's a huge range of customers. There's some very tech-savvy people like this audience, and then there are people who really are not at all. And we have to make it understandable and acceptable to a wide range. And so that's really a challenge for us, is to not only
seek out the technology, form a business plan around it, figure out where we have to play, where we don't have to play, where we partner, where we do it ourselves, but then also how do we package all that in a way that's actually relevant to people? Because at the end of the day, we can't forget that there is actually a customer at the other end of all of this who just wants their life to work. And they want it to work better, and they want it to be more enjoyable. And if we can do that, if we can make it both more fun and easier, then that will be really cool.
And geographically, where do you see the pools of talent that you wanted to go into, but also the pools of consumers that are surprising you with their desire to get into more and more technology savvy in automobiles?
Well, it's everywhere. And I think, it's an old, hackneyed phrase that the world is shrinking, but boy, is it ever. I mean, we're getting talent everywhere around the globe, but these issues are everywhere around the globe. I mean, and I mentioned Africa a minute, in Nigeria and places, well, guess what? They're some of the most cell phone savvy and using, Africa as a continent is. So, there is no geographic hotspot. Maybe 10 years ago you would have said Silicon Valley and a few other places, but now it's happening everywhere and it's happening organically.
And so where do you hope to be seeing the next real area of startup growth coming from? Is there one particular area you're most intrigued in, your VC is most intrigued in at the moment?
Well, it's what's really interesting is 5 years ago, there was almost no activity, startup activity in any of this as it pertained to the autos. Now, there's tremendous startup activity and there's tremendous venture capital interest in this area. So the ideas and the funded ideas are really happening very quickly. And I think there's no area that's being unexplored because a lot of traditional areas like data collection, that wasn't necessarily thought of as autos, but now with all the connected vehicles and all the data that's flowing both from and to autos, that area already existed, but now it's turning its guns to the auto industry. So there's areas like that that I think we'll see shifts in emphasis, which will be really fun. And I think that the most important thing for a company like ours is to be curious. Yeah. We just need to we need to understand we don't have all the answers. Heck, we don't even know what the questions are most of the time. But what we do, we need to be incredibly open-minded and really curious about the world and really understand that these changes are happening and they're going to happen with or without us. And we'd like to we'd like to find a way to have it with us and have it with us in a way that we can enhance people's lives.
And for example, you were running a hackathon, what was it, just yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday here at Croke Park. It was very cool. And yeah, we had a hackathon on our Sync platform. And we made Sync an open platform on purpose because we wanted to be device agnostic and for people to develop lots of different apps around it. And we did that yesterday, and it was a great success. It was fun. It was really fun. I got to spend some time with the developers yesterday, and to me, it's so energizing. I could hang out there all day.
If you were going to pick one job now, if you weren't Bill Ford, if you weren't within the motor industry, and you could look out and think, what do I want to fix? What area would I be working within technology? Would it still be the auto sector again?
For me, I love this because I've never been more excited to wake up every morning. Because if we can solve the problems of urban mobility and we can make people's lives better, then that's a really cool thing.
I think we've got to leave it there. Here's to the revolution of the auto sector.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Please give it up to Bill Ford.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was fun.